Hello everyone and welcome to He Said, She Said. Well, if you haven't been following the channel, the state of things here is that our creative space is still very much a work in progress. One of the things that's really in dire need of an upgrade is my miter saw bench. There's a couple of things. You can see that it's very much a hodgepodge in a number of ways. Part of it's made of this aluminum extrusion stuff, and back when I made this, I kind of ran out of it or was really short of it, so it only goes just so far, and then the lower portion of it is actually done with 2x4s. So the top is pretty beat up, it's got glue all over it, and it's outside the frame, but there's only an extension bench on one side of the miter saw. I actually want to be able to extend this and have an extension bench on the opposite side of the miter saw as well. But I'm going to go for broke with this aluminum extrusion stuff. I've managed to procure quite a bit more of it over the years, and I've got a nice little stockpile, and I'm excited to see whether I'm going to be able to build what I hope I can build, which is the entire miter bench all out of the aluminum extrusion. I also want to take extra advantage of this aluminum extrusion. Basically what you've got here is four-sided T-track, which not only gives you really cool hardware for joinery, for joining two different pieces of this stuff together, but it also gives us maybe some other creative things that we can do. And I was intrigued yet again by something I saw on Pinterest, and what I'm looking to incorporate into this thing is this functionality. So at minimum, multi-purpose is going to mean two purposes. It's a miter saw extension bench, but it's also a clamping table. Also, obviously, this footprint affords quite a bit of potential storage space in the shelves and space beneath the worktop. So I think what I need to do next is inventory my collection of extrusion a little bit more closely to confirm that I have what I need and the length that I need to build something about this height and about this length. So let's see how that works out, and I'll get back to you in a few minutes. All right, so I've taken some additional measurements and I've chosen some initial pieces to make some cuts on. Now, it sounds weird, but I'm really excited about making these cuts, and it's mainly the excitement is around this blade. My previous understanding of what you use to cut metal with is something that looks a bit like this. It's this solid fiber, I don't know what it's made of, but it slowly gets smaller and smaller and disappears as you use it, and you end up throwing it away. Well, what was really fun about using this kind of blade is this is the result that you get. All of this burring and stuff that you have to file away when you're done with it, and it's just a terrible mess, but it was my understanding that that's just what you put up with if you're going to cut metal, in particular aluminum. But in the interim, since I've worked with this sort of stuff last, I've learned that there is a carbide tooth blade that is intended for aluminum, and you get nice, crisp, clean cuts. Now, what I'm hoping is I'll get nice, clean cuts that look like what I'm just going to call factory cuts that somebody else did on these sections to make the initial thing that I purchased. I came across this completely assembled, I don't know, workstation, workbench thing of some kind that looked like it was used in a, I don't know, some kind of manufacturing production line or something, but I, of course, took it all apart so I could make something different. It's like a big boy's erector set, right? So, yeah, I'm going to move some things out of my way. What are we going to get? Oh my gosh. Yeah. Look at that. Look at that. Oh, I'm so stoked. Do you have any idea the time it'll save me with all the cuts that I need to make where I don't have to like deal with this aftermath? Oh, I love this blade. Ha! All right, well, it's time to pick out some more pieces, make some more measurements, make some little marks, and go to town. So there's lots of different types of hardware available to join two pieces of this extrusion together. I happen to have a couple of types in front of me here that have come along for the ride with these contraptions built out of this stuff that I've purchased over the years. You've got this 90-degree piece like here. It's got a bolt in it with a special shape to the head, this T-shaped head that fits the T-track very nicely, very perfectly. So you can turn that head, drop that in, join your other piece with it, and of course there'd be a second bolt and a second nut that would go into the adjacent piece that you're joining. You tighten all those two down, and of course it holds it very, very nicely. If you wanted to second one of these brackets on the opposite side for extra strength, you could do that too, although this joint all by itself is super sturdy. Another type of hardware that I've got consists of this barrel with a set screw in the top, and then again you've got a bolt with that very distinctive T-shaped head. So in order for this type of hardware to work, you need a 17mm hole drilled in the extrusion so that this barrel can drop into that hole and then this bolt, if you want to call it that, fits into the end of the extrusion. So once that barrel is at the proper depth, this bolt will drop in. You can then join two pieces like this, turn it, tighten that set screw, and it pulls everything together quite nicely. I really like this type of hardware because it's basically invisible, as opposed to this type, you've got this extra thing sticking out alongside this. I'm not sure if one is stronger than the other, but if for nothing else, for cosmetic reasons, I think this is pretty fancy. So in order to use this type of joinery, of course, I had to come up with the means to make a 17mm hole. And, well, I don't have drill bits that big. So I actually had to order something special, and it came today. So I hesitate to call it a drill bit. It's almost more like a hole saw. I'm hoping and praying that this thing works as slick as that new saw blade did on aluminum. Let's give it a try. So what I'm wanting to do next is use one of these pieces that's already been drilled by someone else. Use this piece as a jig to set up the stop and the fence on my drill press table so that I can do several of these back to back and have good precision placement. I got the sense pretty early on that doing these holes wasn't going to be nearly as easy as the previous step, which was just cutting those aluminum pieces down into shorter lengths. I'm adding WD-40 to the cutter here just to lubricate things. I'm sure you guys that are avid metal workers will be all over the comments letting me know what sort of lubricant I should have used. But this is what I had on hand, and it got me by for the most part. Ugh, so the cutter just got bound up in the metal and doesn't want to spin. Took some gymnastics to free it up again and get back to drilling again. But yeah, making these holes is definitely a little more arduous than what I had hoped. I started cleaning out the debris, the extra little shavings from the area, and that seemed to help a little bit if I did that every so often. But then also as I went along, I got more and more generous with the WD-40, and I think that was as much of a game changer as anything. I definitely learned a lot on this first one. The rest of the holes went a little bit better and a little bit faster. It just took a little time and patience, but ultimately I got them all done. Next I wanted to get working on the shelves, so these are the shelves that are going to be about knee high. I wanted to get these done now before starting the assembly process of bolting together the aluminum frames for those extension tables that go to either side of the miter saw. So I'm just lining up all the edges and the corners of both shelves so that I can clamp them together, and that's in preparation to just notch out each one of the corners. I want these shelves to be sort of self-retaining, meaning I don't want to have to use any extra fasteners to secure them in place. So with both pieces of plywood clamped together like this, I only have to run the jigsaw once to notch out those corners, and then both shelves will be ready to go. As far as a finish goes, the shelves are just going to get painted. I've got some leftover paint that I used for the doors of the shop. But before I do that, I want to just round over the edges of the shelves. I'm pretty sure these quarter round bits are the ones that see the most use in my router table. So another milestone in the project, a lot of the planning and drawing and measuring and prepping materials and cutting things to size is done. Now I get to have a little bit of an assembly party and get the aluminum frames all bolted together for these extension benches that will go on either side of the miter saw. So before I bolt the stretchers into place, those stretchers will actually support those shelves that I cut to size earlier. But before I install those stretchers, I'm going to bring one of those shelves in here just to double check that it fits. Hooray, it fits! I mentioned earlier I've got a pretty good variety of the joinery hardware for assembling this aluminum material. I ended up using a combination of the hidden type and the not so hidden type.
Doing this assembly by myself was a little bit fiddly. I don't know why I didn't think of it at the time, but usually if I'm doing something like this, I'll just use a clamp to act as a shelf for one end of the stick to sort of rest on while I'm actually tightening up the hardware at the other end of the stick. But I didn't think of that at the time, so you'll watch me struggle a little bit going back and forth, keeping things adjusted. As you've probably surmised, these benches are actually upside down. And the next step that needs to be done is to have the leveling feet added to them, which is a little tough to do with them sitting up on the sawhorses. So I recruited some help to get them down to the floor so we could do that next step.
This might work out better. Let's go. There we go. That's it.
Just see if I can grab it. Let's go.
Alright. Good. That's it.
Right, let's take another break.
Okay. Thank you.
I found these really nice leveling feet online, and I think I already had the proper size tap on hand to be able to cut the threads so that those leveling feet could be installed. For the moment, I'm just going to snug the leveling feet all the way down as flush as they can go. But once we get these benches in place where they're actually going to go, then I'll start getting all fussy about getting those leveling feet adjusted and ensure everything is square with the world.
All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for today. Feels good to get a bunch of the design work done and get those aluminum frames built. There's still a lot more to do, but I'm happy to take my time. I want this to be the ultimate miter station that I've ever built and the last miter station that I'll ever have to build. So I'm happy to kind of go for broke in terms of taking my time and paying attention to the details. So I hope you're enjoying this project as much as I am. If you've ever built a miter station, let me know about it in the comments. Tell me what some of your favorite creature features were. If my build has given you any ideas, or you've got ideas for me of things that I need to incorporate in what I'm doing here. Part 2 of my miter station build is coming up soon, so be sure to watch for that and tune in. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in the shop today, everyone. We'll see you real soon and have a great day.